So thanks so much. I guess I'll start off by saying thank you so much to Lethbridge College for having me here. We're going to talk about VR tourism in a little bit. Thanks to Rumii as well for putting this platform together. It's great to see innovative tech and innovative uses of technology, which is awesome, especially right in our backyard here in Alberta. Lethbridge College putting this on. So the topic today, what we're going to talk about is VR tourism. And I guess before we get started, I'm just going to talk a little bit about myself. I won't be long though, promise. My name is Timothy, and I'm based in Calgary, Alberta. I'm an Alberta boy, so I'm all over the province, not necessarily in Calgary. I've done some work in Lethbridge, done some work here, done some work at in BC as well, Vancouver, Okanagan, Vernon, Kelowna, things like that. And how I got my start in this industry, a lot of the stuff I'm doing now is 360 imagery, 360 video, photography, and virtual tours. And how I got started actually was I was actually in the construction industry, and I saw a huge lack in content. So I started with architectural visualization, a lot of VR stuff, 3D images, and then got into 360 stuff right within that construction industry. And then I started to expand when VR was starting to become more popular. When the Vive came out, me and a business partner, we bought a couple headsets and some computers, and we were starting to rent them out. I'm a Mac user generally, so it was tough for me to get into VR as far as like being cost effective. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to make units available to rent, $40 a day, $50 a day. So we bought a couple headsets with some nice fast PCs and rented them out. Quickly, we found that there wasn't much of a demand for that actually in Calgary. So we started to dissect what we wanted to do. We wanted to be in this realm, in this industry. So what we looked at was 360 imagery, 360 video, and virtual tours. I'm a fan of travel. I've lived in Calgary for most of my life. I've lived in Costa Rica, and we travel as much as we can, me and my wife. So that was really an option to kind of blend these two worlds together. I don't focus just on tourism, but I do a lot of capturing real places rather than creating stuff from scratch, which is both cool. So that's a little bit about me, and we'll get this started a little bit. So first off, when you're thinking about tourism, there's what we're using now, so where we're at in the stream of time, where we're going and how we can get there. And one thing that we might think of right away when we think about tourism is digital places. So think about places like in Tron, the Grid, the Oasis in Ready Player One, or places like Wakanda in Marvel's Black Panther. These are places that are, of course, all not real, but we can visit them in virtual reality. And really, VR is the best medium for that. To see photos and videos and images like that are one way to experience it. But to be able to experience some of these places in VR is the best way, the best medium. But to be honest, the technology needs to be advancing much more, especially if it's replacing a trip to Hawaii if you want to go to Wakanda here. With new technology like haptic feedback gloves, haptic backpacks, treadmills and all that stuff, it's getting there to be actually, to be in a place that doesn't exist. But more importantly, I think where we're at is using current technology to see where we want to go in the real world. So whether it's traveling to Central America, whether it's traveling to Europe, places like that, you can experience that now, whether it's 360 on a tablet, 360 on your phone, Google Cardboard, or in bigger VR headsets like the Oculus Rift, the Vive, and things like that. And there are some of the bigger players that are having a part in this. So we think of one of the biggest mediums right now or platforms for 360 locations or 360 or VR locations is Google. They have the Google Earth. They have Google Earth VR, which is an incredible app. And they have Google Street View. So I'm not sure if any of you have ever used Google Street View to either revisit a place or to pre-visit a place. I recently was in Victoria and in Vancouver Island there, and there was a street I was looking for, and I've never been there. I was looking for like kind of a boat launch. and I visited all in 360 and VR before. And when I got there, I kind of knew what I was doing already. I knew it was right around the corner, down this gate, down this, this little sneaky little entrance, and it was awesome. It was kind of one of the first times I realized that, like, wow, I can really like I can educate myself before um, going to a place and getting a really good representation. So where we're at in the stream of time with tourism and VR is that we can experience places before we go there. Everyone, or for the vast majority of people, they do a lot of research before they travel using sites like Expedia, Travelocity, things like that. And they check out photos and video and they research and research because we don't want to waste our money and go to a place and it not be what we expect it to be. And looking at what VR can do, it can immerse us that much more before we actually go to a physical location. So that to me has huge application. Expedia has been playing around with VR content. Um, the trouble is how much content's really needed. And that's if any of the viewers here are creators, there's a huge opportunity for creators to contribute to that, to get that moving. So when we think about VR tourism, is we are competing against traditional mediums right now, photography, Instagram, or video on YouTube, like really emotional 4K, drone footage, underwater footage, all that stuff. So we need to create content that matches that. And looking at this image like this of a turtle or this in one of these reefs is that on a phone this would be a brilliant image or brilliant video, and if we do a 360 photo or 360 video, it's not going to be as clear as this. So we want to do as much as we can to create high dynamic um, photography, video, and all that stuff. I think as far as where VR tourism is right now is that it's an aid to get to motivating people to visit a location. It's not replacing. Um, if I said, here's a VR headset, go visit Hawaii for a day, or you can fly to Hawaii and enjoy it in reality, what are you going to choose? And most likely you're going to choose the real thing. But what it can do is it can really help us plan a trip. It can help us re-experience things, or we can do things like a mini vacation. If we have a nice VR headset, whether it's Google Cardboard or Gear VR, if we're privileged enough to have a Rift or a Vive, you can to put on a headset and to be able to visit a place, sit on the beach for 5 minutes in your office on your lunch break or at your home. That to me is very special. Um, and thinking again or speaking again about VR, the Google VR app, you can it's amazing. Google Earth VR, you can go to different locations. I've never personally been to Europe, but I've been there in VR. I've sat at the Eiffel Tower, looked up, and saw the vastness of it, and really it motivates me to want to see it in real life. But it does kind of it it suppresses my appetite too. Sometimes if I don't want to go visit a place in reality, I can just kind of see it and say, "Yep, that's cool," and and that's it. So speaking to the creators, and this might be a bit of a weird photo, but speaking of the creators again, if you're taking 360 video, 360 photography, and using this professionally or even just to revisit a place or to share your travels, one thing we need to learn about is image quality and perspective. So with the vast majority of, or sorry, the vast amount of cameras that are being released, 360 cameras, we have, Samsung has their Gear series, the GoPro Fusion, Yi, the Insta360 line has a lot of different stuff. Anywhere from $200 to $5,000 for prosumer, and then right up to Nokia Ozo for $60,000. The images that we use at a consumer level, for the most part, are about 4K to 5K, 5.5K, unless you're using an Insta360 Pro, which can do 8 and 16K. I choose to use a DSLR, so I actually shoot all my images on a DSLR with a nodal tripod head, and I do a spin. So I take an image here, spin at 60 degrees, take an image here, spin at 60 degrees here, and I do that 360 pano, and that gives me about 16K images with a relatively cost-effective setup, and it just produces that much better imagery. For video, it's a little bit more of a beast, but for VR tourism, a lot of times with a photo 360 panoramic and some really nice sound effects and stuff can really immerse us in that experience. So one thing is about the quality of the camera, and the next is the perspective. So if you're a creator, whether again it's for professional or for your own personal use, we have to look at it, especially if you're going into VR, as think about your perspective. Over the last few years, sport cameras like the GoPro have been more and more popular. It's a great way to share GoPro. You can go surfing and put a GoPro on your board. You can put on your wrist, put on your head, and all these really cool angles. Going into 360, you have to kind of scale back a bit and simplify it. If you put a 360 camera on the ground, you're going to get an image like that, like a mouse point of view or a gopher point of view, and it's no good for VR. If you're telling a story from the point of view of a gopher, that's awesome, of course. But if you want somebody to relive that experience, then we want to use the same perspective. So I usually shoot about 5'5". It's kind of an average height. It's a good perspective. If the ceilings aren't too high, then it still feels good. If you go up to a 6-foot tripod, then an 8-foot setting, it's going to be a bit too tall. If you're shooting inside of a car and inside of a cockpit of a plane, on a train, try to get your camera to be at the level where people are going to experience that view, and that's important for creators to do. We want to immerse people and not confuse them, and really that perspective. So this really helped me. Last year we had a chance to film Sparkling Hill in Vernon, British Columbia. It's an amazing resort. It was created by Swarovski crystal. So within this resort, there's 3 million Swarovski crystals all over the place. It's a beautiful place. And this is a wellness spa, not just a spa to get a massage, but to relax and to be quiet and to decompress. And one of the problems they were facing when showing this beautiful location, imagery is awesome. It's easy to capture. But with a night's stay, you get access to their saunas, and they have 9 saunas, uh, different temperatures, different humidity levels, different aromas, and all that. And really, it's hard to express to people like this is an amazing place to experience. So what we did is when we did a virtual tour, a full 360 tour in VR, to be able to walk around, you can go and sit in these saunas, put on your headset, and you're there. We did some even shots inside bathtubs, in the rooms, in the hot tubs, so that when you're sitting at your house and you can put on your VR headset and you can say, okay, yeah, now this is how it feels like to be in this sauna, in this hot tub, and that has we've had a chance to show this to quite a few people, and they immediately get it. And we had a chance to work with Sparkling Hill to solve this issue with them. And it's little things like that we can offer our clients, to offer consumers. And on that note, I just want to talk briefly about UI, like user interface. We want to make it as easy as we can, as easy as possible for somebody to put on a VR headset and to immediately experience what they need to experience. If it's clunking around, if it's not plug and play, people immediately lose attention. So we want to make sure that we shoot in a nice way. The platform that we're using is comfortable. We want to think about the user. The user is more important than us, I find. You can create a really cool app or really cool situation, but if it's clunky to experience, people aren't gonna stick around. So that's something we can think about. And the other thing that's exciting right now, because of the time that we're in, is we're kind of in the wild west in VR in general. Is that it doesn't matter if you have a multi-million-dollar budget or if you're creating stuff in your home office. We're all in the same boat. There's a lot of underdogs, and there's a lot of chance to promote yourself, to promote your company, to promote VR tourism. And I think it's an exciting time if you're interested in it. There's a lot of ways to be a part of it. And I've seen fairly good growth even in the last year and a half that I've been doing it, just focusing more on that. And it's great. It's great. You work with good people, you work with a good industry, and you get to see some really cool results. So if there's any questions for you guys, that's about what I got to say. Any of those creators out there or anybody that have used VR for tourism, for booking a trip, anything like that?
Looks like Tyler here has a question.
Yeah, for sure.
Go ahead.
So, have you experienced the VR? I know it's not a game. I guess it's just a documentary, The People's House.
People's House. I don't think I have. What is that all
Okay.
about?
It just Obama gives a little tour of the White House right after he finished his term, and in it you're sitting right across from Obama, and it's pretty realistic. It's kind of a surreal feeling sitting in a chair across from him, but then the camera is only at one height, and very, very quickly got nauseous because I sat down in my office chair, which can bounce a bit, and that little change in perspective, um, without my head or my eyes actually seeing that, made me that nauseous feeling that you often get in VR. Now,
Mhm.
have you worked or considered having multiple, like a rig that has multiple heights set in one? Is there a way of, um, I know it takes more software, but there's a way of doing that such that you don't have a full space around you, but you have, when you go to these places, you can move your head just a little bit more and gain some perspective than more than just one standalone point.
Yeah, for sure. So what you'd have to, I guess, what you have to look at is you think about your audience. If you want to make a sitting like a presentation or an application that's meant for sitting, then film it at that or shoot it at that eye level. So that's what's kind of weird. If you're doing a standing up, like doing a roller coaster, it's meant to be sitting down. Standing up is going to make you nauseous. Or but even as simple as just the wrong perspective can send us off. So when you're shooting, again, like think about your user. When I'm shooting, I generally shoot for standing. 'Cause a lot of people are standing when they're doing things like VR, or specifically sitting down and being able to relax and take that perspective. Um, that's something we have to keep in mind. Um, I think we will get better with like right now, like these images, 360 images are all 3 degrees of freedom. Right now, Google's working on something the Oddity, which is 6 degrees of freedom. It's like a mix of 360 images and photogrammetry. So I think that will help with some feeling too, because you can still move your head and tilt it. It's still a 360 image, but you get that much more um, movement that's natural. I think that will help too.
Hmm.
I hope that answers some stuff.
We also have a question from Twitch. So you gave insight into things you consider when creating VR, like perspective and user experience. Are there programs to train people in VR, like photography and videography that you can think of?
I did a lot of my research. Just like I use YouTube a lot. I looked at what's kind of happening, what's out there. Um, there are some tutorials. A lot of the stuff on YouTube um, focuses on 360 stuff, and more important, like sometimes it's like the tiny planet stuff, and not really necessarily to photography and VR. And if it's virtual tours, it's usually talking about real estate, which is kind of like that's a different realm. Um, but I use a program which I love. It's actually meant for virtual tours, but I max it out, and it's called 3D Vista, out of Spain, and you can build things from scratch. You can go into 360 into VR, super easy. There's some tutorials on it. If you need any help, reach out to me. I'd be glad to give you some insight and get fast tracking you on using that. The more people that using it, the more community we have, the better. But there's for the photography, a lot of it. There's some stuff on Udemy, but I just learned 360 stitching with videos and just trial and error, and really just kind of dialing it in. A lot of that stuff.